morning, everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss pre-market video for Wednesday, October 1st, 2025. I am Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss. Happy hump day, happy first trading day of the new month and of Q4 of 2025. Today we had ADP non-farm employment change come out a bit ago here and came in negative 32K versus a 52K forecast. A little bit of a counter move here and then bounce back up on that news, but not really much of a wiggle just yet. Instead, what we're seeing right now is price take out two-day lows and has already worked its way back to the midpoint of the session, which could open the door to progressing across the range and perhaps getting into 67.50 today. We continue to see expanding three-day range on an intraday basis. We could still see pullbacks, perhaps as deep as even 66.90 for a rotation back up across the range into 67.50. The previous session we got right about what we were expecting on any push into a low getting into 67.40. It got it by the end of the day. Today's a very similar concept as this market kind of opens with some compression here ahead of the new start to the month and the quarter. Now, speaking on a monthly and quarterly basis here, with the pivots, you'll see right here higher value relationship for the pivot range. I know it's tough to see right now, but your pivots are right there for the month. That's your previous month's midpoint. This all means that price could literally drop as deep as this level and still be a buy back to the previous high. So any pullback that deep to begin the quarter could still be a buy, kind of like this one or this one, for example. We could start up here first, and however price responds in this red zone here, that could provide a big rejection. If a big rejection occurs, we might be headed back to the midpoint of the previous quarter right off the bat. So how we play out early this quarter will help give us some directional conviction the rest of the month here. Right now, still trending up until proven otherwise. From a very short-term perspective, developing a three-day expanding range with the potential to see 67.50 here today. Could be a lot like yesterday here, where you're seeing some back and forth, but watching to see how this plays out here within the range. All right, looking at the NQ. Now that we have the base analysis for the ES, the NQ is very similar here. You can see here a push below two-day lows, a nice recovery of those two-day lows, now already back at the current day's midpoint. That opens the door to potentially getting back to the previous session's highs near 24.9, perhaps even a bit beyond in the best case scenario. So any pullback here as deep as 24.7 could offer an opportunity to push this thing back up in the range. Again, like yesterday, it was a lot of chop, a lot of back and forth. Today could provide some of that here. We still have a modest downward short-term bias here, but we have a very modest upward bias and a very clear compression here. That compression could release some energy early this month. Again, from a pivot range perspective here, you have a higher value relationship. Any pullback here could still be a buying opportunity for a rotation up until we see a very strong high at some point down the road. All right, looking at crude oil, this one's down 0.6% and has not really been able to see expansion through that 61.45 level. That's this level right there. You can see how many times we've pretty much hit that zone and held. Today, so far, the low is 61.61, and we'll be seeing how the market responds if we test that zone proper. Again, that's been a staunch area of support lately. It's also the previous quarter's low, previous month's low right here by way of that blue line. So if we do drop even a little bit below it, do we start to bounce back up toward the midpoint of this range and back up toward value as this market continues to build this range here as well? And remember, there is a tendency for price to rally at the end of September and in the first week of October before we see our seasonal pattern of weakness. So are we going to see a surprise bounce here, or do we just start that seasonal pattern of weakness right out of the gate? Again, if we do break down, 58.20 could be next. All right, looking at gold futures, this one's up 0.8% right now. Again, this one is on one to the upside in a big way. Big time expansion right here, 3,500. You got to push through 3,900 for the first time now here today. And the expectation is for a continuation to 4,000, which is not that far off. You're talking 95 points off, which could be hit by the end of the week if it really wanted to. You look at this intensity of this trend, especially with the 8-period average. There's no real pullbacks here. We had one little 3-day pullback. We had this little 3-day pullback. And after that move, we anticipated the same type of move this time around and got it. Do we see another little modest pullback before the next run? Or are we going to see a little bit more mature of a pullback, unlike anything we've seen in about 6 or 8 weeks, before we run to the upside? Again, how does this thing play out? It wouldn't be surprising if we just kind of really quietly just pushed into 4,000 here, and then we're starting to look for signs of a blow off top. A blow off top that could eventually lead to the next trading range from 3,500 to wherever the top may come in, 4,000, 4,100, and then you have that larger range to trade within. So watching to see how that plays out here early this quarter. Looking at the YM. The YM here with a 2-day compression yesterday, a 10-day compression overall. Very, very clear digestive days there. If you look at that 10-day range here, super compressed, at least 10 days from the Fed level here. This is now 11 days, and you can just see all of that energy being built up. There's enough energy in here for at least 1,500 to 1,700 points of range over the next 2 weeks. So to begin the month of October, to begin the new quarter, the first 2 weeks could provide quite a bit of volatility if we can get outside this range sooner than later. For example, if we start to explode to the upside here, it could be a 1,500 to 1,700 point rally. But if we drop and reject back up, we could be looking at a move from this low up. That's about 1,500 to 1,700 points. So there's various ways this thing can play out. Right now, again, based on the higher value relationships, the bullish overall trend, the expectation is still, if we pull back to 46K, it's still an opportunity to fade it back up to 46.6. And then across the range and perhaps into highs. Now if we fail at 46K, now that opens up 45. So big time level at 47, 46, and 45. Alright, looking at Bitcoin. This one's up 2% right now and rising toward 118K. That's what we talked about to begin the week. We're trading between 108 and 118, and we could see movement within this range. Big time start on a Monday here. Pull back and go on a Tuesday, continuation day Wednesday, and approaching 118. That's going to be a big level. That's also near the Fed level from July, 118,635. A little bit of a way, a little back to it, then took it offered, back to it, back down, back up. That level's been mostly offered so far. So do we start to rotate back down into the range below? Or is this going to be a breakout through 118 that starts to open up some strength right ahead? Again, the way we finished the month, the way we finished the quarter, not super inspiring from a bullish perspective. Here's the high, here's the low of the quarter, that's your close, and that's also the midpoint. So the mid is also that level, and when that happens, you're in a trading range. You're in a trading range. You can either go up and then come back in, or you're going to come down and come back in. You're in a larger range right now, and when you do have a range of that magnitude, you may not even get to the edges. You might stay in the middle 50%, which is kind of what it's doing already. So this thing could still be stuck. Even if we did get above 118, there might be some short-term movement to a new high, but then fade back in could be the play. So watching to see how this develops as well. Ethereum, much stronger today, 3.3% higher. But like I mentioned with this one as well, despite the recovery of 4,000 here, we're still kind of in a down move. We're still seeing some pretty strong reactions here. We are retesting some major PIMAs from below. And additionally, like Bitcoin here, from a monthly pivot standpoint and from a quarterly, but monthly here, this thing closed right near the monthly mid between the two extremes. That's the extreme, that's the extreme. It's a narrow pivot range that's inside this one here, so Do we see some early volatility, and which way? The first move right now is up through these pivots in both cases. Is that going to be enough to lift things to the previous highs? You know, again, when that's the case, you're just kind of in a trading range and anything goes, and the best opportunities are at the edges, and you can get chop in the middle. So we just got to be a bit cautious here and let them play out. All right, that is it for now. We'll see how this plays out here heading into the rest of the session. Good luck, trade well, and I'll see you in the trading room. Take care.